Hey everyone, it's Kai
and Lafayette, and this is
The Theory of Living. Thanks for tuning in. We're able to bring you this episode thanks to our Patreon members.
Patreon is a subscription-based platform where people can provide support for content creators like us.
Thanks to our Patreon members and supporters, we're able to provide free content on the podcast and weekly episodes.
By being a Patreon member, you'll have access to our entire podcast library, full video and audio episodes, along with much more.
If you like this episode and you feel it adds value to your life,
or you hate it,
please subscribe on Patreon and or leave your review on Apple Podcast.
And don't forget to mention it to your friends over your next beer. Truly, thank you again, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Members and Spotify listeners,
They started, by the way. Yeah.
Our first time having a guest on the show.
Yeah, man.
Sweet 16.
Sweet 16.
As he said. I wanted to say it
episode.
first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
16th episode, and we have Josh Robin joining us today all the way from Troy, New York. What, Troy?
Troy.
Where him and I first became friends. It's been a few years now. We've known each other for a hot minute.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exciting to have you here.
Yeah. Dude, it's our friendship is a very, very cool, very like special and dear thing to me.
Yeah.
Because like friends, they, like people come into each other's lives at different times, and some like more, like I keep using the word serendipitous, but I just feel like it really is just like a very powerful theme, this journey that I'm on right now. But like, I really needed like a friend.
This is one way to treat a person who's not friends with them.
Come along, afterthought. Oh yeah, Kai, I forgot you're on the show.
Ignore it, guys.
No, I love and appreciate you too. No, but that was something which I thought was really cool. Like you just like I needed like a very particular friend, and you just like appeared down the street. Like here I am.
know we literally lived like
down the street.
A few homes away from each other.
Yeah,
we're in the
I didn't know
downtown.
that. I didn't know that.
So
Your first apartment, or
first apartment right downtown on 2nd Street.
Okay.
You were probably, one push away on the skateboard.
Yeah, literally.
So we were right there on the same block. We had a mutual friend, Mike, through the climbing gym and all that, who I met. I actually don't remember how I met Mike. Mike is a blur how I met him. I feel like I just met him out drinking in Troy one night, and he didn't even live in Troy, and it was very confusing. Right. But he was like, "Oh yeah, I climbed too," and then I don't even remember the first time I met you. Actually, I'm sure it was through Mike.
I think it was through Mike, and I think that we met outside at Franklin Alley.
Oh snap! Yeah.
I think that was, we did it a bunch of times, but I think that was the first, yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because then you and I built a friendship entirely separate of Mike and I's relationship, and like you and I hung out a lot because we were way more accessible with each other and things like that. But it's funny how you say like serendipitous, because I totally agree. I feel like so many friends I have just been, they're in the right part in their life. I'm in the point in my life where we can totally like actually communicate effectively. Like conceptually we can understand each other. Mm-hmm. And that's been really cool, because now we're here all these years later. You knew I was in the engineering industry at that time period. You were, in the car industry at that time. And now we're all doing our own thing all these years later. Yeah. And we're in different states right now recording this episode. That's fucking crazy.
It's really crazy. It's very cool. And this trip of me driving across the country, there absolutely were times that I could have done this before. Mm-hmm. And, for whatever reason it was, I need to stay where I am longer. This isn't the right time. I should be doing this instead of that. Mm-hmm. This particular like time of me doing it, it just was like, oh, I saw an opportunity and I went for it. I just like automatically just like jumping into a body of water with a very strong current. It was just like, I'm going to do this. And the commitment was like almost waiting there for me.
Wow. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
We were talking about this, again, to go back to the word we've used a lot lately, serendipitous, though. It does feel like when you lean into the things that you're passionate about and that you care for, truly lean into them without expectation, and you kind of throw caution to the wind as it was, that you're rewarded in these serendipitous moments in the way that it almost feels kind of like fate. Like everything's working for you. Like, yeah, there's hiccups, there's stresses, there's all these things. But then you get this like crazy reminder that this is the correct thing. You're on the right path. Keep going. And it just is like enough fuel to keep going through all the hardship till you get that next reminder.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Yeah, because like you're saying, you could have done this at any point in the last few years, but you're doing it now.
Yeah. I mean, well, the most recent, like last time that I was like, okay, I'm gonna drive out west. I'm gonna do this thing that I've been talking about doing for as long as I can remember in my life. It's like, all right, this is when I'm gonna stop working my job, and then I'm just gonna go. And within a 2-week period, one of my closest, dearest, longest friends was like, let's do this. Let's start a company together. And same 2-week period was me getting nominated for an award in my industry, me being offered a keynote in the area that the company that we were forming was going to be in. It was like, okay, like I really, really want to just pack up my stuff and drive around the country for several months and have like no responsibility to anything at all and be uncomfortable and expand from this very like compressed state that I've been in.
Yeah, yeah.
But also like, when else does one of your best friends and you align to start a company, and these external sources are like, yeah, do this. We're all in alignment for this. But I'm also like very present and aware of the fact that if I did that trip, this trip, then just like if I did this trip all the other times that I wanted to, like obviously number one, I would not be here in this moment.
Yeah.
But it would be just a completely different thing.
Yeah, different experience of
Yeah.
it entirely.
Did you have any external forces for your decision? Like that, okay, my friend is asking me for this, starting this business, but you're really doing well in your, at your job, right? And I'm sure you thought about it for a while, but then was there any external like influence that made you go with that decision?
Yes. I mean, there's always a bunch.
Right.
I thrive in the environment that my last job was. Like working in a car dealership, it is brutal. It is high stress. It's extremely long hours. It's it's everything that you are told that you should avoid in a job. That is a car dealership.
That's the job you took, huh?
At least like the service side. But I also I love it. I really do. But it also it takes a toll. It does. And I got to a certain point where it was, we spoke about your almost probable certain future. And it's like, what does tomorrow look like? Well, tomorrow looks a whole lot like what today looked like. And today was missing a lot. I didn't fulfill on the things that are important to me, like the core me. If I spoke to little Josh and little Josh looked up at me and said, what would little Josh say to me about how I'm living my life right now? And he probably would have a lot of questions that I wouldn't want to answer.
Yeah.
That's
hard. The childlike, the values you had as a child, the things that sparked joy for you and interest, the things you were passionate about that you couldn't wait to grow up because you knew you were going to live your life in this specific way when you could get out, your parents' house or the situation you're in, school, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like that kid that was like, nah, my life is going to be fucking cool. Or it's going to be like whatever.
Right.
And then, to be at odds when you're not living that life that you so dreamed about. It's got to be rough.
Yeah. I mean, you have to. I mean, we all do this. We all make concessions. We all make agreements, these quiet little agreements that well, I want to do this thing. This thing is important to me, but today I won't do that. I won't fulfill that thing. I won't work towards that thing. and a lot of the times the because that you follow that up with is to its like the true core value of it is it's because I'm okay with all this other stuff. I've allowed myself to be okay with all these things that I'm just actually not okay with.
Yeah. 100%.
And like what you know quotes way better than I do, but most men lead lives in quiet desperation. Was it Thoreau?
Yeah, it's Thoreau.
All right, I nailed it.
Well, you asked him, so basically it didn't nail it.
I didn't nail it.
I'm just lying and saying yes. I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely Thoreau. Somebody's gonna look it up. That's not Thoreau. What are they talking about? Walden Pond.
But it's such a true thing.
100%.
Yeah. So, like me, the and I think it's really important to focus on this for a moment. Being in whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship, it's a lifestyle that you're in, that you accept, but you're not content with, is something that I think we all deal with at some point or for most of our lives.
Yeah.
And
100%.
It's so important to have that really uncomfortable conversation with yourself where you can be forgiving with yourself of saying like, I understand why you are doing this, why you have done this. And it's okay if you continue this because you've done it this long and you can continue to do it this way.
Yeah.
And what would it look like if you changed to do something that you would be like fulfilling on something?
Yeah.
Whether or not you achieve whatever this, if there is, like this grandiose goal or this dream or whatever's at the end of, your road, you still have the opportunity to go for that.
Yeah. You know what it sounds a lot like to me? It sounds a lot like self-love. Like it's understanding you're making concession for yourself to realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there were certain circumstances that led to arrive to this position, and that's okay. And it's perfectly okay if I continue down that direction. But now I have to make a choice because I realize I'm here because of certain reasons. Do I continue down the path or do I pivot?
Yeah.
And both answers are fine as long as you're willing to recognize the pros and cons and what you have to sacrifice to do either or. Because then you're empowered by just realizing your options. You're no longer deceiving yourself necessarily. I don't think we do it purposefully or intentionally, but there does seem to come a time in most people's lives where they realize I continue to be this person forever or I do something to change. Yeah, and they could come in a lot of mini moments. This is specifically like a huge moment. Maybe you're like thinking of quitting your job, maybe you're thinking of starting a business, maybe you're thinking of picking up a new hobby, breaking up with somebody, divorcing, starting a relationship, whatever, these big kind of milestone moments that we have in our lives that seem to affect the rest of it. Because like you said, we live in this moment of basically the reality right now is what we're probably going to get tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then once you start realizing that, you're like, oh shit, wait, have I been living my day the way I'd want to live it? Yeah, Kai, you talk about this. Who was the guy, the book you read, who's saying like, if you could have the perfect day, what would you do?
Oh, there was a 4-hour work week, Tim Harris. Yeah. Did you?
I've read it, and that question broke me. That question broke me because I didn't know how to respond to it, and somebody else had asked me, if you could live one day of your life, if you could pick one day that you've already lived and just live that over and over and over again, you can't change anything. You just get to experience that one day. What would it be? And sitting there, and I was trying to think of like monumental moments in my life that like I was so joyed, and then it was like, oh wait, like I robbed myself of joy.
Right.
I am the thief of
heavy.
joy, and it was like, you know what? It's probably a day that I don't remember and would never remember because everything was just okay. And that's like you can kind of like, I think that's also important when you're looking back at a relationship because when relationships end, you kind of like miss like all of that experience kind of just evaporates.
Yeah.
And you're left with these like a few moments of like absolute joy. A lot of them are like at the very beginning of the relationship,
Right.
the honeymoon phase, the magic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then there's like a couple like big moments, and then there's like whatever happens at the end, the things that you ruminate
Yeah.
over.
That's so
But
true.
like, you know, like the great days where you wake up and you hug in the morning and like you split and you go off to work. And
You're getting me emotional over here with the beer, man. This guy, you know, yeah.
And we don't need to focus on relationships, but like in
Josh,
you know, like
I'll take you back. Yes, Josh, yes. You
Hard
have
for me
me.
here
like there's
for the
there's-
camera.
there's something so very powerful about, you know, like days that you don't, you really want to take stock and be present to each one
Yeah.
of the days that you have, because you don't know how valuable they are. Like today is a very special day for me because like I'm out here in Phoenix. I've traveled across the country. I'm here with my friend that I haven't seen
Yeah.
in so long. I've known you for hours,
Yeah.
and I feel like you're going to be a friend for the rest of
Oh,
my
man.
life. Like immediately, it's like, boom, we're buds. We're doing a
exactly.
podcast. Like
Yeah.
this is great. If this was every single day of my life, I wouldn't appreciate each one of these moments.
Yeah.
And I think that like as we go through our lives, we really need to spend more time focusing on like the little joys, the things
Yeah.
that brings us happiness.
Oh, 100%.
You have to.
Yeah.
And also, you know, while I was listening to all this, like what spoke to me the most is that the first step, always, the most important thing is a continuous evaluation of your life. Otherwise, you can't even get to the point where you can judge, or you know, you can judge the importance of your life, whether or not you should move on or stay, you know, where you are. This is all impossible if you don't evaluate your life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to make,
Right.
and again, when you say judge your life, right, you're making an assessment against it. It's not the atypical way we think about judgment that it just has a negative connotation.
Yeah.
A judgment can be a good thing. You're like, you assess and you realize that has value and you keep it, right? Or you can assess something and say, oh, that has negativity, and then maybe shift it. But kind of like what you were speaking to, Josh, that you can truly only appreciate these moments because you've had some shitty ones. Like, you've had some fucked up, hard stuff of being lost, being totally like, what am I doing with my life? Who am I? You know, really rough shit that the three of us have absolutely 100% gone through. But I think that's critical for people to understand. We've only arrived at this moment
Yeah.
because we suffered that. You know, like we were talking about earlier, even using the word suffer, I want to use that word more often because it usually can mean a good thing comes from it. Like, sometimes you have to suffer things to get a better thing out of it. So now when I go through moments of suffering or discontent or frustration, I can realize like, okay, maybe this is just the soil for the good thing to come.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the manure to grow something beautiful.
Yeah.
This fucking sucks. For sure this sucks, but
Right.
maybe I can have a bit different mindset about it, and it makes it more tolerable.
Well, like
Yeah.
that's like in order for an arrow to go far, it has to get pulled backwards. And so every time that I'm like in one of those like really, really crappy moments, which is usually prolonged over X amount of time, where it's like, oh, this struggle,
Yeah.
I don't want to do this. I have to deal with myself on top of all these other things, and I don't want to deal with myself, and I don't want to deal with these other things. But it's like, this is it. This is like the struggle. If I can get through this struggle, this suffering, this is only going to propel the next thing.
Yeah.
And one of the we'll call it like a dirty joy that you learn like when you're engaged in like entrepreneurship or just like a lot of life change is that a lot of times the result of your labor is failure. And you have to be able to, I mean, it's something that you learn and everybody learns it on their own, but there's failing backwards and there's failing upwards.
Yeah.
And
It's a real concept.
it's this crazy thing, and both are okay. I think it's so important to like reiterate, like removing like make wrong from things, because it's okay to fail at stuff.
Yeah.
I think you need to fail at stuff. You have to fail at stuff. Fail a lot, because that teaches you, not just how to separate it from your identity, that this thing failed. I'm not a failure. I took steps. They didn't produce the results that I wanted. I will either just not do that anymore, or I will try it a different way. I'll take new action steps, and that's either going to produce results I want or not.
Yeah, I would argue the man who has success not from failing is lucky. He's not experienced. He's lucky.
Lucky in the sense that he has achieved.
He's chosen the right path.
But he's actually opposite to lucky, because he's never going to learn what it is like to fail.
Yeah,
right.
In that sense, right? It's not this powerful, overarching kind of full concept of what it is to have growth.
We've talked about this a lot. That a lot of times people who are gifted, once they fail, a lot of them fail to ever come back to where they were, because they've never experienced the failures before. They don't know how to cope with the failures.
So I'm taking from this that I'm not gifted.
Dude, I don't think any of us are gifted. How do you think you end up on a podcast like ours? Like, come on, dude. But no, I mean, I think none of us at this table are inherently or naturally gifted in that way. But I personally think that's the vast majority of the population, right?
Oh,
it
yeah,
is.
dude.
We're not outliers. We're the fucking
95% of the
We're most people in that regard. But we're still doing what we love. And there is a huge difference. And I'm not shitting on people that aren't doing their own thing. There's a lot of people that do not find fulfillment or any type of happiness. And again, not that happiness is everything. I can only use that word because I don't have a more complex word to use that people would understand to describe what we have. Happiness is as close as it gets. What really it is, though, is feels like we're heading in a direction, going somewhere we want to go. Like, we know we want to go there. We know this is the path. Yeah, maybe I'm not familiar with the rocks and the trees and the bumps in the road along the path, but I know goddamn well this is getting me to the destination. And I love every moment of it.
Right.
All the stumbles, all the failures, all the sleeping at night, being lost, not knowing where I am. In some regard, I still know that I'm arriving to the destination because I'm applying myself. And the hardships are part of that. I love that aspect.
I mean, this path is not, doesn't guarantee any success or final, goal, but we're happy, fulfilled, because this is the path that we want to be on, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing. Yeah. But a lot of people who have even, six-figure jobs, whatever, successful based on our societal standards, a lot of them are not happy because that's not the value they've never created for themselves. They're just living based on created values, the values that society, highly praise, right? That's why they're not happy. Even if they make $500,000, $1 million a year, they can show off in front of people, all that, but deep down, they're not happy. They're not fulfilled.
You got a beautiful wife, kids, got cars, got houses. Yet, for some reason, you still feel a need to go cheat on your wife, not spend time with your kids, do everything to avoid all these things that make you happy, but you're running away from them because actually, you didn't choose them. They were thrust upon you to arrive to happiness. They were nothing you actually necessarily want. And again, something can still be good even if you didn't choose it to have it. But there's a different value and a different condition of the quality of good.
It's like finding a treasure with a map somebody created for you. Like, I'm not going to be happy with that because I've never imagined or dreamed of finding or getting it for myself. I've never dreamed it. But somebody made the map for me. Oh, there's treasure at the end. You got to go there. You just go there because it sounds good. But then not necessarily you're going to be happy with it because it's not something you created for yourself, right?
Right. That treasure, you didn't choose it.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody chose it for you.
Exactly. Well, it's also like arriving at the treasure, and then you find out it's a goddamn Klondike bar. I hate Klondike bars. But that guy's like, yo, Klondike bars are the shit. Are you kidding me? Who was on a Klondike bar?
Right.
That's what you're doing. You don't even know what you're arriving at.
Exactly.
But then you get there, and this is why people, I think, oftentimes we call it a midlife crisis, because typically this is when you reach critical mass of all these things. You know, typically at this point, you're married, you have a house, you have a steady job, you have kids. You've reached critical mass of all those good things, and you realize, wait, what? I don't even like chocolate. What am I doing? This isn't my shit. Which then leads to a lot of pain, because then you have to do something about it. You know, and a lot of people unfortunately seem to, you know, step out of the relationship, ignore their kids, just things I mentioned. You know, things that are considered a lot of negative things. They can't be honest, right?
Yeah.
Because the honest truth is like, I have to change all this.
Yeah.
I have to hurt people. I have to hurt myself.
It's scary.
Yeah, that's hard, man.
Call for radical change.
Yeah.
Right?
And I mean, the three of us, we can all speak to radical change in our lives. I mean, Kai, man, you've been married. You know, you've exited relationships. I've exited relationships, not marriage, but we've all left our jobs. We've all started companies now. We're all doing something different. And I wanted to actually get into that subject because I think what you're doing is very cool. And to give more background, maybe you could talk about, like, you've done so many different things, like musician, like now you're in the...
Actually, we talked about it earlier.
Yeah, we did, but we lost it.
We lost it.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay, so like very, very quick recap. It's like where to begin.
The start, baby.
The very start.
Yeah. Well, okay, so you're a musician, you're a writer.
I've been I've lived the life of being a musician. I still am. That doesn't go away.
Right.
I've written a book. I have been published numerous times in a couple different magazines. I've written screenplays. I have spoken at events. I've done stuff.
Yeah, you said you were a keynote speaker recently, right, in Vegas?
That was in Vegas. That was in Vegas last year. Yeah, I gave a keynote speech on the future of funding and regulation for infrastructure projects.
Wow.
For EV, right? Electrical vehicles, or was it more...
It was fairly like general, but it was in relation to electric vehicles.
That's cool.
Yeah. Oh. So my background work-wise is for the past 10 years. I started as a automotive technician. I worked on Hondas. And I did that for like 4.5 years, was like hybrid certified. I worked on the cars. From there, I switched over to being a service advisor, which is if you go to a dealership, the person that you talk to, usually it's the person that you yell at because they're telling you that you have to spend money that you don't want to spend with time that you don't want to use. Like it's a whole negative situation. But so I had that job for a while. I then left that to do consulting for dealerships because in those positions, it was like there's things that work, but there's things that don't. And there's no way to change this from inside of this machine. So I have to leave the machine and then take what I've learned, learn more, and then bring that back and help these people. That was really it. It was I want to help the people in these positions because I know the stress that they're experiencing. And if I can help one person, awesome. I've found starting a business, my first entrepreneurial venture, to be extremely confronting, very difficult. It's really easy to have an idea, a great idea, even as great as it possibly could be. I have figured out how to cure cancer. Awesome. You don't get to just snap your fingers and put that out there. You have to put it into this very specific mold for a business. And I just didn't have an education on that. Yeah. So I had some success, but not sustainable success. And so I found myself re-entering the car business. But all that knowledge and that impact and that growth while doing personal development courses, which was a whole other thing. But the greatest investment that I ever made, ever, was in personal development, the best.
Yeah.
But came back into the business, quickly moved into management, managed 2 different stores. And then from there, I started talking to one of my oldest, dearest friends who is an engineer.
That's this week's short version of the episode of the Fear of Living podcast. Thank you for listening with us, Youre Lafayette and Kai. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode.
And if you'd like to help support us, we have a Patreon page where you can subscribe for exclusive content, early access, and full versions of the podcast.
Also, please share with others who you think may find value in our discussion.
Leave a rating, a review, and please subscribe.
Thank you again.
See you next time.